I'm Michael, 38 years old, and 8 months ago, my perfect 8-year marriage to Jessica shattered like fine china on concrete. I was celebrating our anniversary at Bella Notte, that upscale Italian place downtown, when her phone lit up with a message preview. Can't wait to put my D*CK inside you again. My stomach dropped while she sipped her wine, oblivious that I'd seen it. What happened next changed everything. Her reaction when I confronted her with the truth made her literally choke on her fettuccine. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to hear how I rebuilt my life after discovering my wife's betrayal. Before I met Jessica, my life revolved around coding and career advancement. As a software developer for a growing tech firm in Seattle, I spent most nights hunched over my laptop, building programs while my personal life remained stagnant. Friends tried setting me up on dates, but nothing clicked. I was that guy who was married to his job, financially comfortable but emotionally unfulfilled. Then came Alan's wedding. Alan and I had been college roommates, and despite growing apart over the years, he insisted I attend his big day. That's where Jessica and I first crossed paths. She was a bridesmaid, tall, with auburn hair and a laugh that carried across the reception hall. When our eyes met during the best man's toast, something electric passed between us. You look like you'd rather be anywhere but here, she said, sliding into the chair beside me during dinner. That obvious, huh? I replied, loosening my tie. Let me guess. Friend of the groom, would escape to check work emails if it wouldn't be considered rude. Her accuracy made me laugh. We spent the entire reception talking about everything from our career ambitions to our shared love of true crime podcasts. Jessica worked in marketing, crafting campaigns for luxury brands. Her intelligence and ambition matched my own, and for the first time, I met someone who understood my drive. Our first date was 3 days later, coffee that turned into lunch that turned into dinner. Within 2 months, we were practically living together. She was passionate, thoughtful, and challenged me in ways no one else had. When I proposed after a year, not a single person seemed surprised. The wedding was small but perfect, just 60 guests at a mountain lodge with views that took your breath away. Jessica's parents, Robert and Martha, beamed with pride, and my mom cried through the entire ceremony. We honeymooned in Greece, spending lazy days on white sand beaches and exploring ancient ruins. 2 years into our marriage, we purchased our dream home, a 4-bedroom colonial in a leafy suburb with excellent schools and a backyard perfect for the children we planned to have someday. Jessica had just received a significant promotion at her marketing firm, becoming the youngest executive director in company history. I had transitioned to a senior development role that allowed more flexibility. Life was unfolding exactly as we planned. Our routine was comfortable yet exciting. Weekdays meant career focus, but weekends were sacred. Farmers' markets on Saturday mornings, hiking nearby trails, or spontaneous road trips to coastal towns. We hosted legendary dinner parties where Jessica's culinary skills shone. Our friends often commented on how in sync we seemed, finishing each other's sentences and supporting each other's dreams. It was during one such dinner party that Thomas first entered our lives. Jessica's firm had hired him as creative director, and she mentioned wanting to introduce him to our social circle. He's brilliant, she said. Just moved from Chicago and barely knows anyone. Thomas arrived with an expensive bottle of wine and charm that filled the room. Tall, athletic, with carefully disheveled hair and designer clothes, he had our guests captivated with stories of his ad campaigns and international travels. I noticed how animated Jessica became around him, laughing more loudly, touching her hair, gesturing expansively. At the time, I attributed it to professional admiration. As months passed, Thomas became a regular fixture at our gatherings. Jessica mentioned his name with increasing frequency. Thomas's innovative campaign ideas, Thomas's recommendation for a new restaurant, Thomas's opinion on the latest industry trends. In retrospect, the signs were emerging, but I trusted her completely. The first genuine red flag appeared about 6 months before our anniversary. Jessica began working late more frequently. Big client, was the explanation, always delivered with a quick kiss and apologetic smile. Then came the password changes on her phone, justified as a company security protocol. When she began taking calls in another room or the backyard, a faint unease settled in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. We'd always valued independence within our relationship, and I didn't want to become the suspicious, controlling husband. As our 8th anniversary approached, I planned an elaborate celebration, reservations at Bella Notte, the Italian restaurant where we'd had our first anniversary dinner, followed by a weekend getaway to Napa Valley. I purchased first-class tickets and booked a luxury vineyard cottage, planning to surprise her at dinner. Jessica seemed genuinely excited about our anniversary dinner, helping me select a tie that complemented her new dress. A form-fitting burgundy number I hadn't seen before. As we got ready that evening, she seemed slightly distracted, checking her phone more than usual, but I attributed it to work stress. After all, we were about to enjoy a perfect evening celebrating 8 years of what I believed was an unshakable partnership. "Ready to go, beautiful?" I asked, wrapping my arms around her waist as she applied a final touch of lipstick. She smiled at me through the mirror, but I now realize her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Ready," she replied, slipping her phone into her clutch purse. We drove to the restaurant with her favorite playlist filling the car, her hand resting on my thigh as I navigated evening traffic. Everything felt normal, perfect even. I had no idea that within 2 hours, my entire world would implode. Bella Notte hadn't changed much since our first anniversary. The same warm lighting from crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and the soft murmur of conversation mixing with classical Italian music. The maitre d' recognized us from previous visits and led us to a corner table with a view of the city skyline beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. "Your usual Barolo, Mr. Williams?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Yes, please," I confirmed, pulling out Jessica's chair. She looked stunning in her burgundy dress, hair cascading over her shoulders in loose waves. She'd spent extra time getting ready, and now I understood the disturbing reason why. After ordering our wine, I reached across the table for her hands. 8 years, I said softly. "Can you believe it?" Jessica smiled, but something seemed off, a tightness around her eyes perhaps. 8 amazing years, she replied, squeezing my hands before withdrawing them as our wine arrived. We clinked glasses and ordered appetizers. The truffle arancini we always shared. The conversation flowed easily enough, discussing mutual friends, my recent project completion, her latest marketing campaign. Yet every few minutes, Jessica's eyes would flick down to her clutched purse sitting beside her plate. "Is everything okay at work?" I asked after the 3rd time she checked her phone under the table. "Just waiting on feedback from a client," she said quickly. "You know how Thomas gets when he's waiting for client responses." There it was again, Thomas. His name had become a regular presence in our conversations, but I still harbored no suspicions. I trusted my wife completely. Our main courses arrived, fettuccine alfredo for Jessica, osso buco for me. As we began eating, I started sharing details about the surprise weekend getaway, careful not to reveal the destination yet. "I've packed your bags already," I said, excitement building as I prepared to present the envelope containing our tickets. That's when it happened. Her purse vibrated loudly against the table. Jessica didn't move to check it, but the screen lit up, visible to me through the open clasp of her designer clutch. A preview notification appeared with a name, Thomas, and the first line of a text message that froze the blood in my veins. "Can't wait to put my D***CK inside you again." Time seemed to stop. The restaurant noise faded to a distant hum as I stared at the message preview, visible for only seconds before the screen went dark again. Jessica, focused on twirling pasta around her fork, hadn't noticed my expression or the message display. My first reaction wasn't anger but disbelief. Surely I had misread it. Perhaps it was a crude joke between colleagues, though that explanation seemed thin even in my shocked state. My hands began to tremble slightly, and I set down my fork to avoid dropping it. "Michael? You okay? You look pale suddenly," Jessica said, finally looking up from her plate. I forced a smile, years of professional composure in high-stress work situations coming to my aid. Just remembered something about work, I lied, taking a large sip of wine. Nothing important. She nodded and continued eating, clearly relieved I wasn't pursuing the topic of her frequent phone checks. Inside, my mind raced through possibilities, each more painful than the last. I needed confirmation before confronting her, needed to be absolutely certain before potentially accusing my wife of 8 years of infidelity. Actually, I need to calculate something for the surprise, I said casually, setting down my wine glass. Can I borrow your phone? Mine's dead. A flash of panic crossed Jessica's face, so quick I might have missed it if I wasn't watching carefully. Use the calculator on your watch, she suggested, her voice slightly higher than normal. The battery died earlier today, I lied smoothly. Please, it'll just take a second. Reluctantly, she handed over her phone. It's locked though, she said. What's your new password? I asked, maintaining a neutral expression. Her hesitation was telling. 0422, she finally said. Our anniversary date, April 22nd. The irony wasn't lost on me. I unlocked the phone, ostensibly opening the calculator app while she nervously sipped her wine. Then, with practiced speed from years of navigating code, I switched to her messages. Thomas's thread was right at the top. What I saw shattered every illusion of our perfect marriage. Explicit messages dating back months. References to hotel meetups. Photos I can never unsee. Pet names and inside jokes. Plans for their next encounter, scheduled for the following week when I was supposed to attend a development conference in Portland. Each message felt like a physical blow, but I maintained my composure, quickly returning to the calculator, performing a meaningless calculation, and handing the phone back to her. Thanks, I said, my voice remarkably steady despite the hurricane of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Jessica immediately checked her messages, and her face paled. She must have realized the messaging app had been opened. Her eyes darted to mine, searching for confirmation of what I had seen. I took another bite of my meal, chewing mechanically without tasting anything. My appetite had vanished, replaced by a hollowness that seemed to expand with each passing second. 8 years of memories were being recontextualized in real time. Every late night at work, every business trip, every password change now viewed through a lens of betrayal. As Jessica continued eating with apparent difficulty, I calculated my next move. Making a scene in the restaurant wouldn't accomplish anything. I needed answers, explanations, though I knew no explanation could possibly justify what I had discovered. The romantic envelope containing our Napa Valley tickets sat heavily in my jacket pocket, now a painful reminder of my naivety. While Jessica nervously pushed pasta around her plate, I made my decision. I would confront her here, in this controlled environment, rather than letting my emotions explode in a less predictable setting. I took another sip of wine, steeling myself for the conversation that would end my marriage. I set down my wine glass deliberately, the soft clink against the table drawing Jessica's attention. Her eyes met mine briefly before darting away, guilt written across her features. She knew something was wrong but seemed determined to maintain our anniversary facade. So, I began casually. How's Thomas doing these days? Her fork paused midway to her mouth. Thomas? Fine, I guess. Why do you ask? Just curious, I replied, my voice unnaturally calm. You two seem to communicate frequently. Jessica set down her fork, her knuckles whitening as she gripped the edge of the table. We work together, Michael. Communication is part of the job. Is sending explicit texts and photos part of the job description too? The color drained from her face. For a moment, she seemed unable to speak, her mouth opening and closing without producing sound. Then came the desperate attempt at denial. What are you talking about? Her voice trembled slightly. I saw the message, Jessica. It lit up your screen. Can't wait to put my D*CK inside you again. Not exactly professional workplace communication, is it? She shook her head, tears forming. Michael, you misunderstood. It's not what you think. Then I also misunderstood the dozens of messages I just saw when you handed me your phone, I said, leaning forward. The hotel meetups, the explicit photos, the plans for next week when I'm supposed to be in Portland. Jessica's face crumpled as she realized the extent of what I had discovered. She hastily took a bite of pasta, perhaps to buy time or avoid responding, and then it happened. She began choking, her body's physical reaction to the stress of being caught. I watched dispassionately as she coughed and sputtered, drawing concerned glances from nearby diners. A waiter rushed over with water, which she gulped desperately. The irony wasn't lost on me, her body betraying her just as she had betrayed me. Once she recovered, tears streamed down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "Michael, please," she whispered. "Not here." "Where then, Jessica?" "In our home? The home where you've probably been with him too." Her silence confirmed my suspicion, and nausea rolled through me. "How long?" I demanded, keeping my voice low despite the rage building inside me. 6 months, she whispered, staring at her plate. 6 months, I repeated, the words tasting bitter. Half a year of lies. Half a year of making a fool of me. "It wasn't planned," she said quickly. "It just happened. We were working late on the Westfield campaign and—" "Spare me the details," I interrupted. "I don't need to know which client account you used as cover to fuck your colleague." Jessica flinched at my uncharacteristic language. In 8 years, she'd rarely heard me curse. "It was a mistake," she pleaded. "A terrible mistake. I've been stressed with work, and we've been so distant lately." "Don't you dare blame this on me," I said, my control slipping momentarily. "We've both been busy with our careers since day one. That was never a problem until you decided our vows were optional." She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled away as if her touch might burn me. "Michael, please. I love you. Thomas means nothing to me." "Nothing? That's not what your messages suggested," I said coldly. "You told him you loved the way he made you feel. You sent him photos of yourself in lingerie I bought for you. You planned meetups around my schedule." Each revelation seemed to physically impact Jessica, her shoulders hunching further with each statement. Other diners were beginning to notice our intense conversation, though I doubted they could hear the specifics over the restaurant's ambient noise. "I made a terrible mistake," she repeated, mascara running down her cheeks. "But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll quit my job. I'll do anything, Michael." Please don't throw away 8 years over one mistake. One mistake repeated dozens of times over 6 months isn't a mistake, Jessica. It's a choice. A series of choices you made every time you met him, texted him, lied to me. I signaled for the check, suddenly desperate to escape the restaurant that now felt suffocating. The waiter approached cautiously, clearly sensing the tension. "Is everything okay with your meals?" he asked hesitantly. "Fine," I replied curtly, handing him my credit card without looking at the bill amount. Jessica continued crying silently across the table. When the waiter returned with the receipt, I signed it quickly, adding a generous tip despite the ruined evening. Some part of me was operating on autopilot, maintaining social niceties while my personal life disintegrated. "I'm going to a hotel tonight," I said, standing up. "I can't look at you right now." "Michael, please," Jessica begged, grabbing her purse and following me as I walked toward the exit. "Don't leave like this. Let me explain properly." "What's there to explain?" I asked, nodding politely to the maitre d' as we passed. The messages were quite graphic and self-explanatory. Outside in the parking lot, Jessica grabbed my arm as I reached for my car door. "It meant nothing. It was just physical. You and I haven't been intimate in months. Because you always said you were too tired from work," I replied, the realization hitting me like a truck. "Now I understand why. Let me come with you," she pleaded. "We can talk this through." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, gently removing her hand from my arm. "You've been living a double life, Jessica. You've lied to my face daily for months. How can I believe anything you say now? Because I love you, she cried, loud enough that a couple walking to their car turned to look. If this is how you express love, I want no part of it, I replied, opening my car door and sliding inside. As I drove away, I could see her in my rearview mirror, designer dress rumpled, makeup streaked, standing alone in the parking lot of what had been our favorite restaurant. Despite everything, a part of me ached to turn around, to hold her and pretend I could unsee what I had seen. Instead, I drove to the nearest hotel, checked in with mechanical politeness, and sat on the edge of the bed in a room that smelled of industrial cleaner and other people's lives. Only then, alone and secure, did I allow the first tears to fall, my body shaking with silent sobs as 8 years of what I thought was love collapsed into a pile of lies. I barely slept that night. The hotel room ceiling became a projection screen for memories now tainted by betrayal. Our wedding day, vacations, quiet Sunday mornings making breakfast together. Jessica called and texted continuously until around 3 in the morning, messages ranging from desperate apologies to accusations that I was overreacting. I silenced my phone but couldn't bring myself to turn it off completely, some masochistic part of me needing to witness her digital panic. When morning arrived, I called my office and took a personal day for the first time in years. My boss, concerned by the uncharacteristic request, asked if everything was all right. Family emergency, I explained briefly, my voice rough from a night of suppressed tears. After a bland hotel breakfast I couldn't taste, I sat on the edge of the bed and methodically began investigating the extent of Jessica's betrayal. Something about her claim of a 6-month affair didn't add up. The ease with which they communicated, the established pattern suggested a longer history. First, I logged into our shared credit card accounts. Jessica had her own cards, but we maintained a joint account for household expenses and larger purchases. Scrolling back through months of statements, patterns emerged. Lunch charges at restaurants near Thomas's apartment rather than her office, Uber rides at odd hours, small but frequent charges at a hotel bar downtown. The hotel charges particularly caught my attention. I called the establishment, the Westwood, and asked for a copy of my folio, claiming I needed it for expense reports. Of course, Mr. Williams. We'll email that right away, the receptionist said cheerfully. Actually, could you check both folios? My wife may have stayed there separately for work. Let me check. Yes, Mrs. Williams has stayed with us several times. Would you like her folio as well? Please, I said, my suspicions confirmed. Jessica had never mentioned staying at the Westwood for work. Within minutes, emails arrived showing Jessica had booked rooms at the Westwood consistently for 18 months, 3 times longer than she had admitted. The earliest date corresponded with a marketing conference she'd attended with Thomas. The most recent was just 2 weeks ago, when she claimed to be visiting her college roommate in Portland. Next, I called Brandon, my closest friend and the person who had introduced me to Alan all those years ago. Brandon and his wife Melissa often double-dated with us, and I needed to know if they'd noticed anything. Michael, man, where have you been? Jessica called Melissa last night hysterical, saying you guys had a huge fight, Brandon said immediately. Did she mention why? I asked. His hesitation told me everything. Look, she said you misunderstood something between her and a coworker. Did you know? I demanded, anger flaring. Did you know she was sleeping with Thomas? Another pause. We suspected something, he admitted finally. Melissa saw them at Cielo's bar about 4 months ago, looking very intimate. When she confronted Jessica, she swore it was just a work thing and begged her not to tell you. The betrayal expanded beyond just Jessica. And neither of you thought I deserved to know my wife was cheating? It wasn't our place, Brandon said weakly. Melissa thought Jessica would end it and come clean. She didn't want to destroy your marriage over what might have been a one-time thing. Well, it wasn't a one-time thing, I said bitterly. It's been going on for at least 18 months, possibly longer. Jesus, Brandon whispered. I'm sorry, man. What can I do? I need a place to stay for a few days while I figure things out. Guest room's yours as long as you need it, he said immediately. And Michael? For what it's worth, we should have told you. That's on us. After hanging up, I checked our shared cloud storage account, searching for any additional evidence. In a folder labeled Work Presentations, I found hotel receipts Jessica had scanned for expense reports, dozens of them, dating back nearly 2 years, many for weekends when she claimed to be visiting friends or attending conferences. The most disturbing discovery came in a subfolder of photos. While most contained innocuous vacation pictures, one album password protected but using our standard shared password contained intimate photos clearly meant for Thomas, some taken in our bedroom, others in hotel rooms I recognized from the receipts. By afternoon, I had compiled irrefutable evidence of an affair spanning not 6 months but closer to 2 years, nearly a quarter of our marriage. The level of deception required to maintain such a long-term relationship while living with me daily was staggering. Every business trip, late meeting, and girls' weekend now appeared suspect. Jessica's calls continued throughout the day. I finally answered around 4 o'clock, my voice cold and controlled. "We need to talk," she said immediately. "I agree," I replied. "I've spent the day discovering your affair has been going on for at least 18 months, not 6. Care to explain?" Her sharp intake of breath confirmed my findings. "Where are you?" "I'll come to you, and we can discuss this properly." "I'm meeting with Frank Mason this afternoon," I said, naming a divorce attorney a colleague had recommended. "Divorce?" Her voice rose in panic. "Michael, you can't be serious. One mistake doesn't erase 8 years of marriage." "It wasn't one mistake," I replied calmly. "It was hundreds of deliberate choices over years. And I am completely serious. Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "Just come home. Let's talk about this face to face." "I'll be by tomorrow to collect some things," I said. "I'm staying with Brandon for now." "Brandon? But…" She stopped abruptly, likely realizing that Brandon and Melissa knew about her affair. "Yes, apparently I'm the last to know about your extracurricular activities," I said bitterly. "Don't worry, I've been fully updated now." After hanging up, I drove to Frank Mason's office. The attorney, a distinguished man in his 60s with salt and pepper hair and shrewd eyes, listened patiently as I outlined the situation and presented the evidence I'd gathered. "Washington is a no-fault divorce state," he explained, "but evidence of infidelity can sometimes influence property division and settlements, especially given the length and extent of the affair. The fact that she used marital funds for hotel rooms to conduct the affair is particularly noteworthy." For 2 hours, we discussed options and next steps. When I left his office, I had a clear plan and a strange sense of calm that comes from taking control of a situation that had initially left me reeling. Brandon greeted me with a cold beer and a spare key to his house. "Melissa's with her sister tonight," he explained. "Thought you might want space." "Thanks," I said, accepting both. "For everything. I'm sorry we didn't tell you," he said again, genuine regret in his eyes. "What's done is done," I replied. "Now I just need to move forward." That night, in Brandon's quiet guest room, I slept soundly for the first time since the revelation, the exhaustion of betrayal and investigation finally catching up with me. Tomorrow would bring a confrontation with the physical evidence in our home, but tonight, I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life. The next morning, I drove to our house while Jessica was supposedly at work. I needed to collect essential items and confront the physical space where our marriage had existed, and where her betrayal had potentially occurred. The familiar drive through tree-lined streets felt surreal, as if I were visiting a movie set of my former life rather than returning home. Our colonial-style house looked exactly as I had left it 2 days ago, lawn freshly mowed, flower beds Jessica had planted last spring in full bloom. Nothing external reflected the seismic changes that had occurred. I sat in the driveway for several minutes, steeling myself before using my key to enter. Inside, subtle wrongness permeated the space, a coffee mug in the sink that wasn't mine, a jacket thrown over the kitchen chair that I didn't recognize. Had Thomas been here since our confrontation? The thought made bile rise in my throat. I moved methodically through the house, collecting clothes, toiletries, important documents, and my laptop. In my home office, I gathered financial records and backed up personal files from our desktop computer. Everything felt mechanical, like packing for a business trip rather than leaving my marriage. In our bedroom, the room we had shared for years, I hesitated before opening drawers and closets. The intimacy of the space now felt violated. As I packed shirts into a duffel bag, I noticed the corner of a shoebox peeking out from beneath Jessica's side of the bed. Curious, I pulled it out. The box contained physical evidence of her relationship with Thomas, handwritten love notes, small gifts with attached cards, a hotel keycard preserved as a souvenir, and printed photos of them together. Some dated back over 2 years, confirming my worst suspicions about the affair's duration. One note particularly stood out. Last night was incredible. Can't wait to christen every room in your house when he's away next month. The date corresponded with a development conference I had attended in Chicago last year. The confirmation that they had been intimate in our home, our bed, hit me with physical force. I sat on the edge of the mattress, box in hand, momentarily unable to move. The violation felt complete now. No space remained untainted by her betrayal. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to awareness. Jessica wasn't supposed to be home at this hour. It was barely noon on a workday. Michael? Her voice called from downstairs. Your car's outside. I know you're here. I didn't respond, still processing the contents of the box. Her footsteps on the stairs gave me time to compose myself, tucking the most damning evidence into my bag as proof for potential divorce proceedings. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's makeup, hair disheveled. She had clearly not been at work as I'd assumed. You weren't answering my calls, she said, eyes red-rimmed from crying. I've been driving around all night and morning, trying to figure out how to fix this. There's nothing to fix, I replied, gesturing to the box. I found your little collection. 2 years, Jessica. You've been lying to me for 2 years. She paled, seeing the box. You went through my private things? Private? I laughed bitterly. Like this is our private bedroom that you shared with him? Like our private marriage vows that apparently meant nothing to you. She stepped forward, reaching for me. It wasn't like that. What Thomas and I had, it was just physical. It didn't mean anything. These don't look meaningless, I said, holding up a Valentine's card from Thomas. And according to these dates, it started just 6 months after our 7th anniversary. What happened, Jessica? What changed? She sank onto the bed beside me, maintaining distance between us. Nothing changed. That's the problem. Year after year, same routine, same conversations. Thomas was exciting, different. It was stupid and selfish, but I never stopped loving you. Love doesn't do this, I said, standing to continue packing. Love doesn't lie for years. Love doesn't bring another man into our bed. I can explain everything, she insisted. Just give me a chance. Before I could respond, her phone rang. The familiar custom ringtone told me exactly who was calling before she even looked at the screen. It's him, isn't it? I asked, watching her face. Thomas is calling you right now, while you're supposedly fighting for our marriage. Jessica fumbled with her phone, declining the call. It's not important. Actually, I think it is, I said, surprising us both by reaching for her phone. Let me talk to him. Michael, don't, she protested, but I had already grabbed the phone and redialed. Thomas answered on the second ring. Jess? What's happening? You didn't show up this morning, and you're not answering my texts. Hello, Thomas? I said calmly. This is Michael, Jessica's husband. Remember me? The guy whose wife you've been sleeping with for the past 2 years? Silence crackled over the line before Thomas spoke again, his voice noticeably less confident. Michael, look, this is between you and Jessica. I never meant to sleep with my wife in my house? Never meant for me to find out? Which part didn't you mean exactly? This isn't productive, Thomas said stiffly. Put Jessica on the phone. Actually, I have a question first, I continued, ignoring Jessica's attempts to reclaim her phone. Does your wife know about you and Jessica? Another telling silence. I'll take that as a no, I said. Rebecca, right? I think she deserves to know, don't you? Don't you dare contact my wife. Thomas growled, his composure cracking. This has nothing to do with her. Interesting perspective, I replied. I felt the same way about myself until 2 days ago, yet here we are. Rebecca deserves the truth, just like I did. I ended the call and turned to Jessica, whose face had drained of color. He's married? I asked, though I already knew the answer. You've been having an affair with a married man? It's complicated, she whispered. They're separated. A quick social media search on my phone revealed this was another lie. Thomas and Rebecca had posted anniversary photos just 3 weeks ago, all smiles and loving captions. More lies, I said, showing her the photos. Is anything you've told me in the past 2 years true? Jessica's facade finally crumbled completely. She collapsed into sobs, curling into herself on our bed, the bed she had shared with Thomas. I'll destroy everything if you leave me, she cried between gasps. I can't live without you, Michael. I'll hurt myself if you go through with this divorce. The manipulation was transparent and desperate. Don't threaten self-harm to control me, I said firmly. If you're genuinely having those thoughts, you need professional help, not reconciliation under duress. You don't understand, she pleaded. My life will fall apart. Everyone will know what I did. My parents are friends. Yes, they will, I confirmed. I'm not keeping your secrets anymore, Jessica. I've already told Brandon and Melissa. I'll be calling your parents tonight. You can't, she exclaimed, panic replacing tears. It would kill them to know what I've done. Should have thought about that before the affair, I replied, zipping my duffel bag. I've spent 2 years in the dark while everyone around me either knew or suspected. That ends now. As if on cue, her phone lit up with a text from Thomas. We need to talk now. Michael's threatening to tell Rebecca. Jessica lunged for her phone, but I had already seen the message. Seems like your lover is more concerned about his marriage than your mental health right now, I observed. Interesting priorities. It's not like that, she insisted. It never is, I replied, gathering my bags. I'll be back with Brandon this weekend to collect the rest of my things. Until then, I suggest you figure out your living situation. I'll be filing for divorce this week, and I want to sell the house as soon as possible. Michael, please. She tried one last time, grabbing my arm. 8 years together has to count for something. People make mistakes. Marriages survive affairs all the time. I gently removed her hand. 2 years isn't a mistake, Jessica. It's a choice you made every day. And yes, some marriages survive infidelity through honesty, counseling, and genuine remorse. But you're still lying, still manipulating, still more concerned about your reputation than the pain you've caused. As I walked downstairs, Jessica followed, alternating between threats, pleas, and promises of change. The performance only reinforced my decision. This wasn't love. It was desperation to maintain a comfortable life that was rapidly unraveling. Outside, I loaded my bags into the car as a text arrived from an unknown number. Thomas again, somehow having obtained my personal number. We need to talk man to man about this. Let's be adults. I didn't respond, but saved the message as further evidence of the ongoing situation. Before driving away, I made 2 calls, first to Jessica's parents, arranging to meet them for dinner that evening, and then to Thomas's wife Rebecca, leaving a voicemail requesting to speak with her about an urgent personal matter. As I pulled out of the driveway, Jessica stood in the doorway of what had been our dream home, her expression shifting from desperation to something harder as she realized I was truly leaving. The weight on my shoulders lightened slightly with each mile that separated us, the first step in a long journey toward rebuilding my life from the ashes of betrayal. Meeting Rebecca for coffee the following day was one of the most difficult conversations I'd ever initiated. We met at a quiet cafe across town, far from where Jessica or Thomas might frequent. Rebecca arrived punctually, a petite woman with intelligent eyes and a nervous smile, clearly confused by my cryptic message. "Thank you for meeting me," I began after introductions. "I wish we were meeting under different circumstances. Your message mentioned my husband," she said, stirring her latte absently. "Is something wrong?" I took a deep breath. "There's no easy way to say this. Your husband Thomas has been having an affair with my wife Jessica for approximately 2 years. Rebecca's hand froze mid-stir, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and finally, painful recognition. "The late meetings," she whispered. "The weekend conferences. The new cologne." I nodded, sliding a folder across the table. "I've brought copies of some evidence. Text messages, hotel receipts, photos. I'm not doing this to hurt you, but I believe you deserve the truth." Rebecca's hands trembled as she opened the folder, scanning its contents quickly before closing it. "I suspected something," she admitted. "But I trusted him when he said I was being paranoid." "I understand completely," I replied. "Jessica gaslit me too, made me feel I was being controlling or insecure whenever I questioned her stories." "How did you find out?" she asked. I explained the text message at our anniversary dinner and the subsequent investigation. As I spoke, Rebecca's initial shock transformed into quiet anger. 2 years, she repeated. While I was caring for my mother through cancer treatment, supporting his career moves, trying for a baby. Her voice broke on the last word. We talked for nearly 3 hours, comparing timelines and realizations, two strangers united by parallel betrayals. By the end, Rebecca had moved from devastation to resolve. "Thank you for telling me," she said as we prepared to leave. "It would have been easier to just handle your own divorce without involving me." "Easier, but not right," I replied. "We both deserve to know the truth." "What will you do now?" she asked. "File for divorce, sell the house, rebuild my life," I said. "One day at a time." She nodded. "I think I'll be doing the same." With Rebecca informed, I turned my attention to the divorce proceedings. Frank Mason had prepared preliminary paperwork, and I signed the initial filing in his office that afternoon. "Jessica will be served within 48 hours, he explained. "Given the evidence of infidelity and misuse of marital funds for the affair, we have a strong position for negotiations." "I don't want to destroy her," I clarified. "I just want a clean break and a fair division of assets." "Understanding," Frank nodded. "But we'll use the evidence to ensure she doesn't try to take advantage during settlement talks." Jessica's reaction to being served divorce papers at her office was predictably dramatic. Her hysterical phone call came within minutes of the process server leaving. "How could you humiliate me like that?" she screamed. "Having me served at work in front of everyone? How could you betray me for years?" I countered calmly. "We've moved beyond courtesy, Jessica." Her tactics changed rapidly from anger to bargaining. "What will it take to stop this?" she pleaded. "I'll do anything, counseling, open phone policy, whatever you want." "I want a divorce," I stated firmly. "The papers outline a fair distribution of assets. The house will be sold, proceeds split equally after the remaining mortgage is paid. You keep your retirement accounts, I keep mine. No alimony either direction." "And if I contest it?" she challenged. "Then I submit all evidence of your affair to the court, including proof you used marital funds for hotel rooms with Thomas. It becomes public record, Jessica." "Is that what you want?" Her silence answered my question. The following weeks established a new routine. I stayed in Brandon and Melissa's guest room while looking for an apartment. I focused on work during the day and began seeing Dr. Wilson, a therapist specializing in betrayal trauma, twice weekly. At Brandon's insistence, I joined him at the gym each morning before work, physical exertion becoming a crucial outlet for my anger and pain. Jessica's increasingly desperate attempts to reconcile became a background nuisance. She appeared at my workplace with lunch, sent daily emails professing remorse and love, and even enlisted mutual friends to advocate on her behalf. When these approaches failed, she shifted to spreading her version of events, claiming the affair was a brief lapse in judgment caused by my emotional unavailability. Most friends saw through the narrative, especially after Jessica's sister Stephanie reached out to me directly. "I need to apologize," Stephanie said when we met for coffee. "I knew about Thomas months ago. Jessica swore it was over each time I confronted her, and I chose to believe her." "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. "Because she's still lying," Stephanie sighed. "She's telling everyone it was a one-time mistake and you're overreacting. I can't be part of that anymore." Stephanie's honesty provided unexpected validation during a time when I sometimes questioned my own judgment. Her support also influenced Jessica's parents, who had initially begged me to reconsider but eventually accepted the marriage was irreparable. Meanwhile, Thomas faced his own consequences. Rebecca had apparently approached their company's HR department with evidence of the affair, raising concerns about professional conduct given Thomas's supervisory role over Jessica. An internal investigation resulted in Thomas being terminated for violation of company ethics policies. Jessica called in a panic when it happened. "Thomas has been fired because of you," she accused. "Now he's blaming me, saying I should have been more discreet. He's threatening to tell everyone at work about us." "That sounds like a Thomas problem," I replied dispassionately. "And for the record, Rebecca approached HR, not me." "Rebecca?" Jessica's voice rose. "You told his wife? How could you?" "How could I not?" I countered. "She deserved the truth, just like I did." The conversation ended with Jessica threatening to contest the divorce after all, a threat that dissolved when her attorney likely explained the consequences of a public court battle given the evidence. By month's end, I had secured a modern one-bedroom apartment downtown, a complete departure from our suburban colonial. The space reflected my new beginning, minimalist, functional, and untainted by memories of betrayal. I furnished it sparsely but intentionally, each purchase representing a small step toward rebuilding my identity separate from the marriage. Dr. Wilson's guidance proved invaluable during this transition. "Recovery isn't linear," she reminded me during a particularly difficult session. "Some days will feel like progress, others like setbacks. Both are part of healing." When the time came to serve Jessica with final divorce papers, I chose to have them delivered to her new apartment, a courtesy she hadn't extended to me. She had moved in with a college friend after Thomas, now in divorce proceedings himself, had apparently ended their relationship. "He blamed me for everything," Jessica admitted during our final meeting to discuss house sale proceeds. "Said I ruined his life by being careless." Interesting how quickly the fantasy collapsed when consequences arrived, I observed without sympathy. She looked up, tears forming. "This is my last chance to say it, Michael. I'm truly sorry. I destroyed something precious for something meaningless." For the first time, her apology seemed genuine rather than manipulative, perhaps because she was no longer trying to salvage the marriage but acknowledging its permanent end. "I accept your apology," I said finally. "Not for your benefit, but for mine. Carrying anger hurts me more than you at this point." As I signed the final document transferring my portion of the house sale proceeds, I felt an unexpected lightness. The divorce would be finalized within weeks, and while the pain hadn't disappeared, its sharp edges had begun to soften. I was no longer defined by betrayal but by how I had responded to it, with dignity, strategic clarity, and ultimately, the first tentative steps toward healing. 6 months later, I stood in my apartment watching rain trace patterns down the floor-to-ceiling windows. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, the paperwork arriving without fanfare on a Tuesday morning. I had signed where indicated, filed the documents away, and gone to work as usual. The absence of emotional turmoil surprised me. What once seemed world-ending had gradually transformed into merely a painful chapter in my life story, not the entire narrative. Dr. Wilson had called this integration, the process of incorporating trauma into your life experience without allowing it to dominate your identity. Our twice-weekly sessions had decreased to once monthly, focused now on future building rather than past processing. The opposite of betrayal isn't blind trust, she had noted in our last session. It's conscious connection, relationships where you're aware of risks but choose engagement anyway. This perspective helped as I navigated my new reality. The suburban colonial had sold quickly, providing each of us with a reasonable sum after mortgage payoff. Financial disentanglement had been surprisingly straightforward, our respective attorneys executing the agreement we'd reached without court intervention. Jessica's life had taken a different trajectory than she had likely anticipated. Through mutual connections, I learned she had lost her executive position during company restructuring, her affair with Thomas having damaged her professional reputation despite HR's discretion. She had moved to Chicago, accepting a lower-level position at a smaller firm. Her relationship with Thomas had ended shortly after both divorces began, his true character revealed once consequences materialized. Thomas hadn't fared much better. Rebecca, showing remarkable resilience, had leveraged his infidelity during divorce proceedings, securing their family home and favorable settlement terms. His professional reputation suffered significantly after the ethics violation termination, forcing him to accept contract work rather than the prestigious creative director roles he had previously enjoyed. Their relationship casualties affected me less than I might have expected. Justice had been served without my active participation, natural consequences flowing from their own actions rather than any revenge I might have orchestrated. My own healing journey progressed steadily, if imperfectly. Initial isolation gave way to selective reconnection. I reached out to friends who had drifted during my marriage, college roommates, former colleagues, cousins once close but gradually distanced by the insular nature of my relationship with Jessica. Brandon and Melissa remained steadfast supporters, though our dynamic had evolved. Initial weekend hangouts characterized by their careful monitoring of my emotional state had transformed into genuine friendship. We rarely discussed Jessica anymore, focused instead on present activities and future plans. Volunteer work became unexpectedly therapeutic, weekly mentoring sessions with coding students at a community college providing purpose beyond career advancement. Seeing their progress, contributing to their growth, offered fulfillment that work alone had never supplied. Physical transformation accompanied the emotional, regular gym sessions with Brandon having reshaped both my body and daily routine. The discipline of early workouts provided structure during a period when personal chaos might otherwise have prevailed. Dating remained deliberately off my agenda for the first 4 months post-divorce. When I finally downloaded a dating app, it was with Dr. Wilson's guidance, approaching connections cautiously but openly, neither cynically withdrawn nor naively trusting. My third coffee date introduced me to Olivia, a pediatric physical therapist with kind eyes and a straightforward communication style that immediately appealed to me. Unlike the intensity that had characterized my early relationship with Jessica, our connection developed slowly, deliberately, with conscious awareness rather than headlong infatuation. On our 5th date, walking along the waterfront after dinner, I shared my full story: the marriage, the betrayal, the divorce. I had learned that transparency served me better than protective secrecy. "Thank you for trusting me with that," Olivia said after listening without interruption. "That's a lot to process and recover from." "It is," I agreed. "I'm still working through it, but I'm in a much better place now. I wanted you to know because it's shaped who I am today." "We all have histories," she replied, her hand finding mine. "They don't define us, but they do inform us. What matters is what we learn and how we grow." Her response crystallized why our connection felt different, built on mutual understanding rather than projection or fantasy. We continued dating without artificial acceleration or arbitrary timelines, each step intentional rather than presumed. As the 1-year anniversary of Discovery Day approached, I realized I no longer marked time by the betrayal. New milestones had replaced old wounds, professional achievements, meaningful friendships, personal growth through therapy, and the cautious joy of new connection. Trust remained my greatest challenge. Dr. Wilson's guidance helped me distinguish between hypervigilance born of trauma and reasonable boundaries born of wisdom. Trusting again isn't about ignoring red flags, she explained. It's about not treating every yellow light as automatically red. This perspective helped particularly with Olivia, whose consistent alignment between words and actions gradually rebuilt my capacity for trust. When she said she would call, she called. When she expressed feelings, they matched her behaviors. Simple reliability, once taken for granted, now represented profound healing. The final symbolic recovery came through an unexpected channel. Jessica emailed on what would have been our 9th anniversary, a brief message expressing genuine remorse without expectations of response or reconciliation. "I've been working with a therapist to understand the choices I made and the pain I caused," she wrote. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I recognize the damage my selfishness created. You deserve better, and I'm truly sorry." After consideration, I replied simply, "Thank you for this. I wish you well in your healing journey, as I continue mine." The exchange provided unexpected closure, not because I needed her apology, but because it confirmed my own growth. Her words no longer held power to devastate or manipulate me. They were merely words from someone who had once been central to my life but now existed on the periphery. That evening, sitting on my balcony watching the city lights emerge at dusk, I reflected on the journey from devastation to recovery. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, perhaps it never would, but it had transformed from acute agony to occasional melancholy, from identity-defining trauma to integrated experience. Trust, I had learned, wasn't about certainty but about courage, the willingness to risk connection despite knowing its potential costs. The alternative, isolation through self-protection, represented not safety but surrender to fear. The most valuable lesson emerged not from the betrayal itself but from its aftermath. Resilience wasn't about avoiding pain but about growing through it. Each decision post-discovery, from strategic divorce proceedings to intentional healing work, had gradually rebuilt not just my life circumstances but my fundamental sense of self. If you're watching this and facing betrayal of your own, know that the devastation you feel isn't permanent, though it certainly seems so in the moment. The path forward exists, constructed one decision, one day, one small victory at a time. The rebuilding process isn't about returning to who you were before, but about discovering who you can become after. Have you experienced betrayal in your own life? How did you find your way forward? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you and subscribe for more stories of resilience and growth through life's challenges. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes what feels like an ending is actually the beginning of something better than you could have imagined.